All right, so now we're recording. All right, so welcome to Microsoft Users Group Utah. There is our agenda, our leadership. I'm Kevin. JR is with us. Josh is with us. I expect a few of the others to join as well as they wrap up perhaps meetings that just ended at 11:30. Housekeeping, we'd ask you to go on mute unless you have a question. Michelle has asked that you ask your questions in chat so that she doesn't get her flow interrupted. We will be watching chat, both of us, and so we'll make sure that we answer your questions. She is concerned that she might not know the answer to every question that you ask, and we'll talk about what we do in that case. And yes, that was a challenge. Also in chat, if you are looking to hire someone or be hired, drop a note to that effect in chat or just stop by and say hey. We are recording, and I'll post this to the Microsoft Utah Users Group YouTube channel soonish. Go on mute. I think I said that once. And no meeting in July. We found that in July, folks are busy doing vacation stuff, and so nobody shows up, and so we're going to go to August. Here are a few other activities going on. We have community office hours by Christian every Monday at 9 and 7. Kids Code Camp is a free opportunity for you to teach your child how to code. SQL Saturday is coming up. Microsoft Ignite is in September. We will do a virtual watch party for Microsoft Ignite, just like we did for the M365 Marathon, and watch for details about that to show up in August. Collaboration Summit in September. If you have other events that you think that the membership should know about, drop that in the meeting chat as well. Okay, so we have a sponsor, and that is the Microsoft Dynamics 365 Fraud Prevention Solution. I have been in the demo for this solution and found it to be much more amazing than I thought it would be. Matt has generously agreed to sponsor this meeting and tell us a little bit more about his solution. And before I turn the microphone over to Matt, this may be something that doesn't apply directly to you in your role in your company, and it may not even apply to your company. But let's spread the word. Let's thank Matt for coming to sponsor our meeting, and let those folks that this would apply to know that they should contact Matt and check out his solution. Like I said, I was very impressed. Matt, do you have slides to share?
I do, Kevin. Yeah.
Okay. So I have stopped sharing, and you're up.
Okay. So let me pull up here real quick. So as I'm loading here, first of all, again, my name is Matt Homolka. I'm a business applications specialist for Microsoft based out of the Phoenix area. I think what we really we're going to talk about a particular solution that solved a Microsoft relevant problem. But I think, and this may or may not be applicable to a lot of you, but I think what's really important to take away from this is obviously everybody knows Microsoft for its Office products and most know it for its Azure products, but we're doing a lot in the area of business applications, whether it be ERP, Power Platform. We're trying to do what we can to impact our clients that are relevant to the functioning of the core business processes. And what I'm going to go over today is an example of that. So this is what a little bit about the background is obviously Microsoft. We're a very large organization. We have a very large e-commerce presence. We have a lot of online stores, do a lot of in-product purchases. At the end of the day, we do about 1 billion transactions a year, 760 monthly active users. Attempted fraud totals about $1 billion a year. So 500,000 in free trial abusers. So we were dealing with a massive fraud problem ourselves, and part of the challenge that we had is we were using traditional fraud protection solutions, which are rules-based solutions, and those are primarily what's in place for anybody that has a sizable e-commerce business to this day. So what we decided to do is we tried to come up with our own technology, leveraging AI and machine learning to see if we could find a better way to do this. So what we ended up doing is, this is a quick overview of the solution we developed for our own internal use. At the end of the day, it's a fraud protection solution that's cloud-based. It helps merchants decrease fraud costs, improve the customer experience, streamline operational efficiency using AI to identify the fraudulent transactions. I'll go into more detail here in a bit, but the three major capabilities are around purchase protection. It helps boost online revenue by decreasing the fraud cost, increasing acceptance rates, and improving the customer experience. This is going to be the primary focus of my discussion today. Just understand that there are separate capabilities, which we could go into in a separate conversation, but they deal more with account protection and loss prevention in store for those who might have retail stores. So let me tell you a little bit about how Microsoft used this to impact our own business. So by automating the process, by moving into the cloud and leveraging the AI and machine learning, we were able to lift our revenue by a combined 9% total between a combination of less false positives and higher bank acceptance rates on online transactions. Furthermore, we were able to save over $75 million overall in OpEx savings, primarily due to fraud loss and reduction in manual reviews. Now, let me illustrate that with how we were able to do this. If you look at the traditional model, a customer goes online, requests an online purchase, that request goes to a series of gateways and then goes to the end bank for processing. There are fees that are charged automatically all throughout this process. So whether a transaction is accepted or declined, you still need to pay those fees. And those fees add up if you have any sizable volume of transactions, which obviously Microsoft does and a lot of our clients do. So what we ended up doing is we put in the fraud protection solution in place. And again, this is what I was referring to when we're talking about AI machine learning. Instead of going this route, the solution bypasses it. We do device fingerprinting. We do an internal analysis as to the level of risk with this particular transaction. If the transaction shows that it's low risk, we will then pass that along to the issuing bank along with a bank score. So that combination makes it a very high probability that the bank is going to approve that transaction and you'll move forward. You'll end up paying the fee for that, but what that eliminates is all those transactions that otherwise would go straight to the bank, get declined, and then you'd receive a charge anyway. So let's back up. What happens when it gets into our system here? We do a risk assessment and we either outright decline it or we send it back internally to do a manual review. This requires either additional validation by the purchasing customer, or an internal review needs to take place before we want to send it to the bank. So putting this layer in here does, again, a number of things. It eliminates the cost of sending transactions to the bank that won't get approved, and it also automatically reduces the level of manual review that's required in the case where the bank wants to send it back anyway for us to do that manual review. So won't go too deep into the technology here, just understand that we've got several layers here in the network. Each merchant has their own tenant space, so this is a cloud-based solution, but data is secure, which is the key takeaway. Your data is not combined with other clients, and because of we have a simplified architecture here, we have higher level of acceptance rates, higher scores, and that improves the overall relationship with the bank. So we do have relationships that I can publicly disclose with American Express and Capital One, and we have numerous other conversations going on with other banks that are still in that process. At the end of the day, once this thing is being deployed out on a larger scale and all the relationships are in place, we see this is going to fundamentally change the impact of fraud in e-commerce transactions overall. I just want to touch on a couple of closing thoughts. Again, what really makes us different is we're the only fraud provider that is both a customer and a provider of the same technology. So we understand what it's like to be an e-merchant. We understand what it's like to be a technology provider that combats fraud, which is reflected in the solution that we've put together here. Again, partnership with the largest banks. It's based on real-time adaptable AI machine learning, includes device fingerprinting with each transaction. And this goes back into, we get a pre-authorization mode. So that goes back to the fact that it doesn't go to the bank until it gets pre-authorized. We typically like to run proof of concepts or pilots with our clients. Those that want to prove this out, we will do no-cost pilots in many cases where we will run it in shadow, run it in tandem with our client's current fraud system. And within 60 days, we're able to generate a report using live data to show what the potential impact in fraud is, and as well as estimate what the financial impact would be as well. So that way, before our clients would commit to something like this, they would actually be able to prove it out and know that it's likely to be successful should they move it into production. And since it's already in a pilot phase, it's typically fairly easy to move into production after that. So we have a lot of success stories, more happening every day. This is a new product that came out just recently. We've been using it for 3 years. It's only been rolled out to our client base over the last 3 or 4 months. So that's why this is probably the first time a lot of you are hearing about it. But we're really excited because of the impact that it's had on our business. And for those who have a sizable e-com business, this would be something that I would recommend that you work with Microsoft and looking at more closely.
So Matt?
Yes.
I have about 3 questions. The first question is, in our previous discussions, there was a threshold that you felt a company needed to be a certain size before it really made sense to pursue or to look at this.
Mm-hmm.
What was that threshold?
So it's a threshold that isn't written in stone, but we find that organizations that have 50,000 transactions a month or higher have a very strong ROI in this. If for those companies that have transaction levels slightly below that, it's still compelling, it's still worth looking at, but the ROI becomes a little bit less compelling. And for those organizations that have fewer than 10,000 transactions, it probably is not going to be relevant enough to look at unless it's in tandem with something on a larger scale with Microsoft.
The other question is, and I'm going to pitch again the idea that we should go out and share this solution with our friends that do fit that profile. If I had a friend that worked at, let's say, a large retailer, and I thought, man, this would be really cool for them to have saved a lot of money, how do they get a hold of you? What's the best way?
So if it's a Microsoft client, anybody that's on this call can reach out to me afterwards. All of our Microsoft clients either have a dedicated account team, and in that case, I would be able to refer that organization to their account representative, and then they would be able to take this and walk them through the process. Or we do have a number of unmanaged accounts. In a situation like that, I would still be able to find a contact. So at the end of the day, at Microsoft, we're all assigned accounts that we support. If I'm not the person that supports your particular account, I'll be able to find out who does. So anybody can reach out to me to find that out.
And you'll find Matt's email address on the meetup listing, and it was in the email that we sent to you as well. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen.
Hey, Matt, just one more question. Can you make these slides available for us to, share internally or with our friends?
Of course. I'll send these over to Kevin and let him distribute.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great question, Greg.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
All right. So Matt, as our sponsor, has agreed to fund not 1, but 2 gift cards to a local restaurant of the winner's choice. And I think, Matt, we said $5 million, no, $50 each, which would be enough for you and that special treasured other person that wants to go out and have a night away from the kids. The way that we're going to do this is if you'll open up a web browser and hit bit.ly.randomjune, That will take you to a 4-question survey, maybe 5. We're going to ask your name. We're going to ask who referred you to the meeting. We're going to ask you what topics you want us to cover in a future meeting. And finally, we'll ask if you want to be on our mailing list. So 4 questions. At the end of our meeting, I will pull up a random number generator. We'll pick a number and we'll go pull that person's form response, their survey. And the person that we pull and the person that referred them to the meeting will each get one of those e-gift cards on Matt and Microsoft. Now, the caveat is you must also be a member of our meetup group so that we can tell you about our August meetings. And that link is there and in the survey as well. So if everybody has memorized bit.ly.com, or excuse me, bit.ly/randomjune, then I'll move on to the next slide. Anybody need more time? And you know what, I'll put it out in the chat as well, just to make it easy. All right, so that brings us to Michelle. Michelle has been doing this forever. She's going to tell us all about it. We are going to learn about desired state configuration. And I just want to say that I am very grateful that Michelle is willing to take time out of her busy life to prepare this presentation and then to come and deliver to us. So thank you, Michelle, and the floor is yours. And I am done sharing, so you can share.
Thank you. I will go ahead and share right now. So let's see, here is my PowerPoint. Should come up.
We see it.
Can you see it?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be doing this, and I hope everyone is staying safe and having a nice day. I heard it's gonna be like 100 today or in the next week, so I'm not looking forward to that, but you know, it should be nice. Welcome to summer, right? Anyway, let's see. This is a little bit of my information here. I am a Zact employee. I'm a Microsoft 365 engagement tech lead and an infrastructure and security architect. Well, a little bit about myself. I'm an IT professional with 25 years experience. Some of the things I've done have included Office 365 migrations, administration. I've done cybersecurity. I actually have a cybersecurity presentation that I do for clients. And it is about an hour, and you know, it's a lot of fun because when I'm present in the room, at least, and not just virtual, I do little things like hide a USB key somewhere and see if somebody finds it. And then, you know, at the end, I'm like, okay, so who found that USB key? And, you know, somebody's going to pick it up and say, I did. Well, what did you think about doing with it? Well, plug it in. Okay, that's the wrong answer. And so I just do little gimmicks like that, and it's a lot of fun. I've also done DevOps, configuration management, CI/CD, Exchange on premise. I have done Exchange since 5.0, actually 4.5, and configuration management. I have also done SCCM stuff for, I don't know, probably about 15 years, back when it was called System Center, not Operations Manager, it was MOM, that's right, or SMS, sorry. And also I have done a lot of Exchange Online administration. System Center Configuration Manager, Intune. I've done Linux deployment and admin, and since I've worked in consulting before, I've also had to do the, you know, all around tech. So I've done Cisco router work, F5s, Juniper, Palo Alto, and the last company I was at, I did people and tech leadership, and so that was a lot of fun too. I've worked at Walt Disney World, IBM, Cigna, WGU, most recently CHG Healthcare, and now I am at Zact. I have also consulted to many small, medium-sized organizations and municipalities across the state of Utah. Worked at, let's see, I'm a member of DC 801 and 801 Labs, and I do presentations at either SaintCon or DEF CON Security Conference. Sadly, DEF CON will be virtual this year, but hopefully SaintCon will happen. Sorry, it's pretty dry. So the objectives today that I wanted to kind of do a high-level overview of Azure Automation and Azure Automation Desired State and PowerShell DSC. I also want to show you how Azure Automation and Desired State are better together. So you combine PowerShell DSC and you combine Azure Automation Desired State. Some takeaways that you can get from this is Azure Automation provides PowerShell as a service. It also does a bunch of other things, but for this presentation, we'll just be covering the Azure Automation Desired State. It's highly available, highly scalable, and as a whole, it simplifies configuration and automation across the data centers, different platforms, and clouds. You can use ARM templates, to provision infrastructure and define Azure DSC properties to have newly provisioned VMs run their configuration. So we have Azure Automation, simplifying cloud and on-premises management. The cool thing about automation is it lowers costs and improves predictability, ensures that systems have desired states, removes the headache of the configuration drift because you will have, hundreds or thousands of machines that, are maybe the same. They have to be configured the same. And you really don't want multiple people going out there and install this role, install that. And so it really reduces errors in a lot of the manual activities. And it gives IT professionals more time. Instead of being in firefighting mode all the time because, oh, somebody installed this on the wrong server or whatnot, they're in proactive mode. So it also has integration and orchestration. And so you can use the modules, like existing PowerShell modules, and different DSC resources to integrate into existing systems. You can also have developers build PowerShell modules to integrate into other systems or components. It really improves service reliability and it delivers reliable and flexible services. And these configurations, we'll call them declarative. They're declarative configurations in PowerShell. So Azure Automation has a lot of different features. And you've got Azure Automation DSC, latest PowerShell support. It's got runbooks, it's got modules, it's got all sorts of different things that you can do. So Azure Automation DSC is just a very small fraction of Azure Automation as a whole. So let's go first to explain what PowerShell desired state configuration is. And it was developed quite a long time ago. And what it was used for was for on-premise VMs. Well, at first it was just physical hosts and then on-premise VMs. It did a really good job at preventing configuration drift. And it had pretty good flexibility in deployment. It also enables continuous deployment. If you script it into, you could use things like push and pull servers. It's a little bit complex to deploy, but here's just like a little bit of a high level life cycle of this. So you have a configuration in PowerShell, and what this is doing on the left side, it's installing IIS. And so, your node would be whatever node name it is. This is just an example. It's going to install a Windows feature, that's web server. It ensures that it is present and the name is web-server. So right there, it's installing the feature. And then it says include all sub features, true, which means that all the features that are required for that web server to work, include them as well. What this script does, and I don't show right here the compilation stuff, but it compiles to a MOF file, Microsoft Operations Framework. It's deployed to servers via a push or pull structure, and it requires a master server separately to house the data compiled for that, to compile data for the push and pull. So there's some DSC gotchas. It's not very manageable at scale. So Houston, we have a problem. Microsoft figured that out and said, hey, it limits access, or actually you cannot limit access very easily. Who can apply changes, configure, compile, who can, add their own configuration files to it. And then each node has, and by node, I mean like the virtual machines or that, they have 1 to the nth configuration. So you have configurations that need to be managed for each of those servers. So it really doesn't help that much if you're, doing it in thousands and thousands and thousands of servers. The change control, reporting, and orchestration, there's not much. The reporting is kind of limited. You don't know who edited what. There is really no good change control. And how do you know that your nodes are compliant? Sometimes the nodes will be out of compliance. It doesn't tell you, which services or which nodes are pending changes. And how do we orchestrate everything without impacting uptime? Enter Azure Automation desired state. It's part of the Azure Automation service, and it uses DSC pull reporting service. The reporting service and the DSC pull service is hosted in the cloud. So you're able to manage Windows and Linux hosts and VMs, whether they're in the cloud or on-prem. On-prem incurs a small cost, but the pricing for the cloud management is free tier. In free tier is up to 5 nodes managed per subscription. You have configuration, node configurations, node and resource management in the cloud. You can author, import, compile, version, report on, distribute, and you really get simplicity with node onboarding. And this is a real high level diagram of the desired state configuration in Azure Automation. So on the left side there, you see authoring. There's configuration scripts and DSC resources. Then we have a staging side, which is the node configurations, the checksum, and the reporting that are all hosted in the cloud. It then goes to a REST endpoint, and then it will communicate between back and forth between your Azure VMs, your physical servers, and your on-prem or data center VMs. So Azure Automation DSC, the benefits are pretty cool. Free tier, you can have up to 5 managed DSC nodes per subscription. So if you have a very small environment, or if you have just like a little test environment, it's kind of neat that you can do that. Now, the caveat there, and when I say 5 free managed nodes, you're still paying for that VM in the cloud. So you're going to be paying for that compute time, but you're not paying an extra amount for Azure Automation. And then there's the basic tier, which has unlimited managed DSC nodes. And it is $6 per node per month. And based on how much it pulls or pushes from the REST endpoint, and it will prorate daily. It has reliability improvements, VM scale set support, improved reporting, and support for a report-only endpoint. And this is where it gets really cool. you can use Azure Automation runbooks. You can find the runbooks online in the Azure Automation portal, and you can use, like, here we go. PowerShell desired state configuration declaratively configures VMs and physical hosts. So you use that to just do that portion. Runbooks orchestrate the complex process across multiple systems. So if you combine them together, you'll see the following scenario, example of a scenario, which can be used in deploying new DSC configurations to production servers by way of creating a staging environment. So and this is real high level right here, but basically what I'm saying is you have a prod environment, you've got a stage environment, you can have a dev environment as well. But for this, we'll just talk about prod and stage. So it configures machines as part of a large process in larger environments. Then it'll monitor source control, GitHub, for example, for commits to a defined DSC repo. Once a commit happens, it stores the DSC in Azure Automation DSC. The stage environment then pulls that DSC, whatever it may be, and then it runs tests against it. Tests fail, it alerts the devs. If the tests pass, it waits for availability or maintenance window and sets DSC and Azure Automation to be pulled by the production VMs. So right there, you've got your, running tests against something in a staging environment and automating that into a production environment. Because and it can't, PowerShell DSC can also be used to do copy folders to servers. So I mean, anything that you can do in a configuration file and then compile it as a MOF file, you'll be able to do in DSC. And so here's a very, very strange file, but so on the left side, you have Azure Resource Manager template. It defines and provisions cloud infrastructure and passes settings to a PSDSC script. So on the right side, you have your PSDSC script. On the left side, you have an example of an ARM template. So the ARM template is being used to configure the infrastructure itself. Like, let's set up this VM this way in the infrastructure mode. Then you use the parameters for the PowerShell DSC script, and you can pass parameters like examples here that you're defining right here in where it says Microsoft PowerShell DSC. So once that server gets created, it already starts adding extensions, and that extension will do whatever the DSC script does. So you pass that, you have a usernames and passwords, you can pass that kind of thing, and it will be encrypted credentials. Let's see here. Oh, I thought I had another slide there. Sorry. Anyway, so I think I went too fast. Because recap, I wanted to show how PowerShell desired state configuration and Azure Automation desired state are better together. And I hope I provided you a high level overview of Azure Automation desired state. Takeaways, kind of the same that I did at the beginning. Just understanding that it's PowerShell as a service and it works with PSDSC. Yeah. Thank you for your time. Do you have any questions for me? I guess I thought that it was going to take a little longer to go through the presentation, but if you want to open your chat window, or if you want to, let's see. Yeah, I think chat window might be the easiest, and then I can read it back and kind of answer any questions you might have.
Either that or Michelle, or they can just unmute and ask their question. But I did have a question.
Okay. Yes.
You talked about the free tier pricing and that it was node based, and after 5 nodes you had to pay. How do the nodes relate to the managed servers? Does one node manage a bunch of servers, or is it a one node to server configuration?
It's one node to the cloud server, to the cloud resource. So basically, it only defines the nodes as your end hosts, your end nodes, endpoints.
So if I had,
Is that?
yeah, so if I had 1,000 virtual machines that I wanted to manage, would I buy 1,000 nodes or one node that would manage all 1,000 of them?
It would be 1,000.
So each machine that
So you would
is,
have to upgrade to a different tier, basically.
okay.
They've changed the pricing around. I'm not quite sure, not being in sales on the sales
Yeah,
side, but
yeah.
they might have changed the pricing around and done different levels of tiers. So you would basically pay $6 per node, based on how much usage that node consumes. And the difference, though, is if you want to use any type of VMs on premises, you have to you pay that $6. And then I believe you might be paying also like data transfer.
That makes sense. Any other questions? Has anybody played with this kind of stuff and have a success story that they can share? Or anybody thinking of a use case where they might be able to use it?
I'm curious, Michelle, if you found a repository online where people have, essentially recipes that they've already posted to say, hey, I need to be able to configure, IIS to support whatever. And so it says, oh, I need to include the web server role, and I need to include this and whatever else, like, common things that people might encounter, to have these recipes just already out there that you can then download, review to make sure they're appropriate for your environment, but not have to reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So you can go to Automation Runbooks, and I can probably find the site. I just don't know it right off the top of my head, but I know that you can get PowerShell scripts. You can get different types of scripts that you can deploy, and then later do something else, like run something else. And that's how you do, you're basically going into, like, say, that ARM template and PowerShell DSC. At that point, you may even be able to find ARM templates out there for this kind of scenario. I'm sure that, there's somebody that needed to create, 20 SharePoint farms, and they were able to do that with ARM templates that first set up the machine, because then you can destroy the machine if it doesn't work, and then just reset it back up, and then do all of the configuration with PowerShell DSC.
Very good. Have you found any holes where you're like, oh, I wish I could really manage, or check and report on this feature, or, this setting, or whatever, and it's not been present? Like, what's your wish list? Like, what's missing here? What can we look forward to as they improve it?
Right. The interesting thing is that I've found it really good at doing what Windows does very well. But the cool thing is that you can also, now they've added Linux management to it as well. So you can use a Python script to install DSC on a Linux box. So again, ARM template to a Linux box to run your PowerShell DSC. So that's pretty neat. You can deploy Linux boxes with it. One thing that I think that there's not a lot of wonderful documentation. There is a lot for PowerShell DSC just in general. So it's kind of like you have to look for the Azure Automation piece to combine with the PowerShell desired state configuration piece. And so when you're looking out there, you get a lot of hits and a lot of resources that are for like the old PowerShell DSC, but PowerShell v4 or something like that, that are out of date. And so the Microsoft page is really good, and it really has some good updates on it. But I think that the best way to start is to look and see what PowerShell DSC is kind of as a whole, and what like just little basic things that it can do. Like it installs roles, it copies files, folders, can run scripts on the remote machine. It's really, really powerful. But I think that one of the things that it is missing is a lot of community behind it. Because I mean, like when you say, oh, I'm automating something, the first thing that somebody thinks is, oh, you're automating to Windows. You use Puppet, Chef, Chocolatey, but now you're automating to Linux, so use Salt. And so, at least one of the things that PowerShell DSC has, or Azure Automation desired state, is that it can do both Linux and Windows. Well, really, I found more drawbacks of trying to do Salt to do things on Windows than I found with PowerShell, obviously, or PowerShell DSC.
So, Michelle, if you were to say all the clients that I've helped with, this is the client that got the biggest win out of this and saved the most time, effort, and energy and kept their site the most secure, what would that use case have looked like? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It would be a use case that I developed for my team that was working under me at CHG. We were trying to figure out how to, the devs were constantly breaking, their environments. They were like, oh, I'm pushing this to this server and it's breaking. And so what we did was, well, instead of having to set it up manually or even a VMware template or just whatever, let's try using, Azure Automation PowerShell DSC. So we did it kind of as a trial, and it really saved so much time. The devs were so happy, and they got a blast. They got a kick out of it because it was like, oh, we have this, and we're able to now say, okay, if we break our machine, just run this script in Azure Automation. And it just resets up the environment. Like you can destroy the environment, reset it back up. And by the way, it's already got your stuff installed.
That is awesome.
So it's really, really cool for doing that kind of like, the dev stage prod process, especially where people are doing stuff in, who knows, Java. And Java sometimes really can mess with things. It also does a really good job at keeping the machine updated. So you don't have to. You can define, updates, and you can define all of that with DSC as well.
I think those are all the questions I have. Greg, you asked some good questions. Anyone else have questions? All right, Michelle, thank you. I'm going to share my again.
All right. I will stop